people saw me coming, like this country bumpkin, you know, ex-school teacher, bringing in a cassette tape, asking for work, and thought, wow, I gotta listen to this. Hi, I'm Sheryl Crow, and I'm an American woman because I was born here in a small town in the Midwest, and I am grateful that I live in this country.
Sheryl Crow in Central Park.
Central Park. My old stomping grounds.
Your old stomping grounds. Like, let's talk about that.
I used to run through Central Park all the time. I ride my bike. Yeah.
The crazy hill.
Crazy hill and all. I loved and still love this city.
Sheryl was born and raised in Missouri, but she always had her eye on the Big Apple. New York is the place where her idols had made music. And in 1999, Sheryl took the stage with the men and women she had come to admire in Central Park.
Got invited to play live at Central Park, which for me was, I mean, there's quite a legacy that goes with that. John Lennon played in Central Park, did a free show. Diana Ross had done a free show there. So when I got asked to do it, I just felt like, I felt like I was
kind of a big
like
deal.
Royalty. I mean, you know, it's like such a history, and so.
One of the songs she performed at that show was Strong Enough. It was one of the first songs I learned while taking guitar lessons in high school. That's when I began to fall in love with Sheryl Crow. It was her music and her message and the way she faced adversity in her personal life. Between the love and loss, cancer, and her path to motherhood, she lived up to the words of the song that first caught my ear.
I was singing in a band that was pretty well known in St. Louis, and a guy who owns a studio came in and he said, hey, you know, do you want to come in and do some jingle work? And I'm like, what's a jingle? I had to go in and do different voices singing E-I-E-I-O. And then I sang, it's a good time for the great taste of McDonald's. And it got picked up, and I made like $42,000 in about an hour's worth of work. And I was making 17 grand as a teacher. And I thought, you know what, I'm young, I'm single.
Why not?
If I'm ever gonna explore my future in music, I'm gonna do it right now. And I took my cassette out to LA and took it to every studio.
And how old were you at that point in time?
I was 23 or 4.
Sheryl's first big break came a few years later in 1987 when she landed the backup gig of all backup gigs.
I overheard some singers talking about the Michael Jackson audition for the Bad Tour, and I wasn't invited to audition because I didn't know anybody to recommend me. So I thought, well, I'll just go and see what happens. So I went and I was hired.
How did that feel just as a woman at that age? How were you treated?
There were 3 guys and myself, backup singers. And so I had the feature of I Just Can't Stop Loving You and The Way You Make Me Feel. And it was unbelievable. I mean, we went everywhere. And I was still a small town person, and I was, you know, really nervous a lot. And there was some sexual harassment. If you know, do this and do that, you can make it in the business, I'll manage you. I hired a lawyer. Even the lawyer said, look, a lot of people would die to be in your position. To have somebody tell you, I'll get you in the top 5. It was almost like I was complaining to him. I wound up just walking away from it.
At the time, the demand was pop. Madonna, Paula Abdul. Sheryl didn't fit in. The music industry didn't know what to do with a blue-eyed soul singer. Uncompromising in her craft, Sheryl knocked on every door.
I crashed a party for Sting.
As one does. When you're Sheryl Crow, you crash Sting's
When I
parties.
talk about it, I'm a little bit embarrassed, but you know, I believed in my songs, and I had played for everyone in LA and gotten turned down by everyone. I went to this party. I gave my tape to Hugh Padgham. He was Sting's producer, and that's how I got started.
A year later, in 1993, her career was officially launched with the release of Tuesday Night Music Club, an album that eventually won her 3 Grammy Awards.
In the 90s, there weren't a lot of female singers who were also producing their own stuff.
And one step further than that, there weren't any record labels that were supporting that at all.
Overtly?
I think,
like, why not?
I mean, I hate to scream sexism, but you had these A&R guys who trusted guys to make sure that they got a good record made. When I went down to make my second record in New Orleans, the engineer that happened to work at that studio was a woman. So it was me and a female engineer. That was as big of a story as the actual album was.
But the story of her other life, as a single mother and as a breast cancer survivor, was one she never could have imagined writing.
You've done this non-traditional mom, adopt 2 boys, you know, life is never perfect. How's that going for you?
It doesn't always line up the way you tell that story. And sometimes the story that you tell yourself about how life is supposed to work becomes that thing that limits your life. It took me forever to learn what that meant. And once I had cancer, I stopped telling that story and just saying, what do you want your life to look like? And I started the process for adopting, and I wound up with my kids. Now I just am constantly saying thank you, because the possibility that I can't imagine is so much bigger than the stupid stories I tell about what life is supposed to be.
What would you say to just young women who are still trying to find their footing in this new era of America?
I find that when there's discomfort, that can be a galvanizing moment for a people. And I also find hope in the fact that when our people are going through real unrest, like what we did in the 60s, some of the greatest art came out of that. And that will be what not only documents who we were at this moment in our history, but it will create a collective experience and a voice for us. And I feel like it's a necessary moment for artists to get busy.
Sheryl did get busy with the release of the single Halfway There, which reflects how divided the country became during the 2016 presidential election.
It speaks to the ugliness that we were as neighbors to each other in our towns, of not being able to actually hold a discourse that revolved around disagreement without even a modicum of decorum or a sense of dignity.
Well, I walk along the left side, you walk along the right.
The differences that we bring to our nation are what makes us strong. But to not be able to value that in a way that is respectful, even in our dialogue, is the undermining of civilization.
What would you offer up to women?
Feminism, I think at its best, is when you're not becoming more masculine to exist in the world, but becoming actually more feminine. I think that's one of the reasons that, I would love to have seen a woman in the White House. And I want to tell all young women, the power that exists within you cannot be quietened by a man. Tap into that on a daily basis. Call it up.